What can we say about Tron Ares other than it's a Tron movie? Director Joachim Rooning seems to have taken all of the elements that make for a Tron movie and included it in his threequel. It's got light cycles. It's got grandiose conversations about AI and the grid and software and users. It's got very cool action sequences involving digital things. There is a big difference, though. In this one, the grid penetrates the real world. So, in 1980s Tron, we went into the grid and we were introduced to this world beyond reality, this world of software and programs and users, etc., etc. In Tron Legacy that came out decades later, almost all of the movie took place inside the grid, and in Tron Ares, it's a reverse of that, where the virtual world starts penetrating the real world, which feels fitting given everything that's going on in the real world, given all our conversations about AI and augmented reality and all of that stuff. This feels like a natural progression of where to take that story. And of course, at the end of Tron Legacy, you had Olivia Wilde's character come into the real world. It kind of ends on that note. We should say that Tron Ares has nothing to do with Legacy. It's very much a standalone film. There are some hints that they're trying to build out a new franchise like they were trying to do with Legacy. And a sequel was greenlit for Legacy, and I think production was about to begin. And even Bruce Boxleitner was supposed to come back for that movie. But then they pulled the plug, and we've waited 15 years, and now we get Jared Leto. I think in the original sequel that was supposed to be directed by Joseph Kosinski, who did Tron Legacy, I think they were going to continue the story of Garrett Hedlund, Sam Flynn, and Olivia Wilde's Cora in the real world. And I think that was the original idea. So this isn't too far of a leap from that, but they seem to have brought in a lot more contemporary elements, which I think is fitting, because 15 years on, the world and technology has changed so much that I don't think you can do a direct sequel to Legacy. I think the ideas in Legacy are already dated.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, this movie feels like the natural idea for 2025. And I have to say, I had fun. I think the movie is a little forgettable, but as you're watching it in the cinema, it has all the elements of an old school, fun science fiction film.
Oh, yeah, agreed. I mean, it's one of those old school 80s, 90s sort of like ride movies.
Yes.
If Disney didn't already have a Tron light cycle amusement park ride, they would have had it after this film. Because that's what this movie is, right? It's a roller coaster ride. Story is super flimsy. I think you called it paper thin at the end of the screening, and I agree. But yeah lah, it's a Tron movie lah. Look, I rewatched the previous two movies, and the first Tron has got the most paper thin entry points into a story.
Yeah.
Right? Flynn quits NCOM because his boss had stolen his game ideas, which is, I guess, in 1982 a big deal, but nowadays it's just like, really? Your boss stole your two great game ideas and you get pissy? The first Tron, other than the fact that you go into the grid and all of the light cycle stuff and the way they shot the movie and the way it looks, the movie itself is not great. It's really quite bad. You know, like, I love the original Tron, but it's a bad movie.
Let's not allow nostalgia to get in the way of actual critique, because
Yes.
you're right. The first Tron was revolutionary when it was made for what it was doing.
Yes.
But as a film, it is pretty flimsy.
Flimsy is a nice way of putting it.
But I think what the first Tron has in common with this Tron, and even to a certain extent with Legacy, is that it was kind of cool. And I think all of the directors have kind of built on that cool factor in different ways. With Tron Legacy, it was Daft Punk. Like, I think Legacy falls apart if it wasn't for that Daft Punk soundtrack. I think the Daft Punk soundtrack does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And in Tron Ares as well, it's the visuals and the music that carry this movie. Like, for me, the movie itself is a solid, say, 7 out of 10, like a good time in the cinema. But the visuals and the music by themselves are a 9 or a 10 out of 10. Like, the CGI is magnificent. There are ideas introduced in this movie with regards to the digital creatures and individuals and objects and vehicles that are very, very cool. There are some very, very clever ideas about digital and reality and where it meets, and I think that stuff's pretty cool as well. But it's the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack as well. I mean, I don't think Daft Punk would have worked for this movie. I think it's a very different film. And I think Nine Inch Nails works because it's more industrial. You're coming into the real world. Like, Daft Punk worked in the grid, in the digital world. It created a new soundscape for what that should be.
Yeah.
Nine Inch Nails feels dirty and gritty and loud and booming. And it was so good. The soundtrack is phenomenal. Yet again, phenomenal soundtrack, phenomenal visuals, do a lot of the heavy lifting with regards to a very basic story.
Don't get us wrong. We're not saying this is a bad movie. We're saying this is a fine movie. This is a fine movie, which was a fine time at the cinema. But yeah, I agree with you. I think this movie is going to be forgettable, right? I think if it wasn't for Greta Lee and Jared Leto, I think we'd completely forget that this movie came out.
And Evan Peters. I thought Evan Peters was doing something different
yeah,
from what he usually does. And Evan Peters plays the bad guy of Dillinger Industries, and it works.
What I will say is at the end of this movie, and not just because of how they ended it, even more than Tron Legacy, I'm curious what a follow-up to this movie will be.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I think this movie has made me excited about the Tron universe. It's not a perfect film, but there are ideas introduced in this movie that feel like there's a natural way forward, and I want to see more of it.
Natural, but also interesting, right?
Yes.
And again, I'm trying to stay away from spoiler territory here, and it's not even just how they ended the film. But there are some ideas here, there are some possible futures here that I'm really looking forward to. The film itself is the film itself. I echo your sentiment. I think the music and the imagery and the graphics of this film really carries it. I think if it was that, it's a easy 9 out of 10. If this was a Black Mirror episode or a Love, Death and Robots episode, I think it would be beautiful and perfect. But because they tried to tell a story, which all things should do, it kind of falls flat. I think the story doesn't carry the almost 2-hour runtime of this film.
That said, it wasn't uninteresting.
Oh, agree.
It was just flat, like you said. It was just two-dimensional because you know exactly how it's going to play out. There are no real twists in the tale here.
I think twists, but also I never really felt any stakes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's stuff going on with Greta Lee's character, and they've got a very clear villain in Evan Peters' Julian Dillinger character, but I was just like, okay lah.
There are also some logical leaps that you have to make, and I don't want to say what they are because I think it might spoil stuff, but there is some stuff with regards to moving in and out of the grid and how long you have in each place that doesn't necessarily follow through logically or that they don't explain very well.
They've set a rule purely for story's sake. They don't even really pay attention to the rule, but they just need a rule so that at some point they have to do the other thing. But it was fine.
It was fun. I'll tell you what I did appreciate, though. I really appreciated all of, and I'm going back to the visual and production design of this thing. I really did appreciate all of the minor changes that they made with the progression of technology. So in Tron, if you remember the first one, light cycles move in straight lines, like the Snake game, right? And of course, technology has improved, the real world has changed, and now the light cycles and weapons can curve and everything isn't just a straight line. It's a very clever visual representation of the changes that come with technology. I enjoyed how, because the vast majority of the movie is now set in the real world, I appreciated how they superimposed light cycle chases onto the grid of an actual city. I thought that was very, very cool. The way Jared Leto speaks in this movie and some of the conversations he has emulates the linguistic style of something like ChatGPT. And if you've used ChatGPT, you will notice it immediately because there is a tone to it. There is a style in the way AI responds to you. And I think that's very cool as well. And I think that linguistic distinction that changes as the movie progresses is kind of clever.
Yeah.
And so all of this attention to detail, I really appreciated. And when we go back to the paper-thin story, unfortunately, that feels like studio interference. That feels like a studio going, hey, let's not get too out there. This is a sequel that's coming 15 years after the last one. We don't want to scare audiences away. We don't want to use the word sci-fi because that scares people. And we want to make it as mainstream, mass, and accessible as possible. And that's just annoying sometimes because you have this opportunity to do something wild and out there. And I think if you do something wild and out there well enough, the audience will come. But I guess if you're signing a check for like $200 million, you probably want to be as risk averse as possible, huh?
I guess, but this movie is, in a lot of ways, the definition of being risk averse. It has all of the right colors, a lot of the right creative cues, but no actual creative thinking. And again, this isn't a bad movie. It's just the third Tron movie that everybody will forget they've seen.
Yes.
There's nothing particularly stand out or creative or anything about this, right? You were talking about how Jared Leto's character speaks the way some, large language models speak. In my brain, I'm going, that's not enough anymore. That's not enough of a creative thing, right? Just because your character speaks like an AI model that everybody knows,
I don't think it does enough to say something about AI.
Yes, correct.
I think this feels like a 101 film.
Yeah.
It feels like the answer to someone sitting around going, hey, wait a minute. What if the programs came into the real world instead? And so it falls back on a very old trope of, what if a robot had feelings? It's Johnny Five discovering what humanity is.
What I was going to say was, this isn't as revolutionary in terms of your example, Uma, of like language speak, right? It's not as revolutionary as Spike Jonze's Her was in 2013, right? When we heard Scarlett Johansson's voice come out of this, in air quotes, machine, and everybody was like, no way robots are going to speak like humans. There's no way robots are going to emote. And yet we have that ability in our phones now, right? People are falling in love with AI models that we know, right? Yet this film doesn't do any of that. It doesn't do any future proofing. It doesn't do any future predictions. It doesn't do any stretches of the imagination. And I think that is the disappointment.
It's safe. It's almost too safe.
If you remember in 1982's Tron, when Flynn first goes to the grid, he meets a female program who was in love with Tron. Not love, but had genuine emotion for each other. And Flynn was surprised at that, right? Because going from a coding, facing a computer point of view, to now seeing programs as humanoids who have emotion, at least an affection for each other. Because remember, the poster of the 1982 Tron was not Flynn, it was Tron and Tron's air quotes partner.
Correct.
Right? So I think they did something. Here, I don't see anything. It's just Jared Leto being a master control program and doing things. And just like, Am I expecting too much? Am I hoping for too much? Maybe.
And I think that was the question I had when I left the cinema, was what am I expecting from a movie like this? And should I get the kind of futurism that I expect from a good science fiction novel from a movie like Tron? And the thing is, the 1982 Tron was that to a certain extent. Because it was throwing out these wild ideas that at the time felt utterly ridiculous and may never come to be. I think Legacy had fewer wild ideas. The wildest idea in Legacy was probably bringing a program out into the real world.
And even then, that was nothing they were really considering throughout the film. It was literally something that happens in the last 10 minutes of the movie.
And I think the problem with Ares is that none of these ideas are wild anymore because we can see them happening in the very near future. And I think maybe they didn't have enough futurologists or whatever you call them on set, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they should have gone crazier.
Yeah.
Maybe we are expecting too much from a mass blockbuster trying to appeal to all four quadrant studio movie.
You can stretch a little. You don't have to put those ideas on screen, but you can have the characters speak it. You can have the characters think it through. Whereas here, nobody's actually talking about tech stuff.
They aren't actually. And even when you break down the movie into 3 acts, everything happens kind of quickly, and everything happens in a way where the movie is presupposing that the audience has a certain amount of knowledge as to how these sorts of movies work. So you don't question it because you may have seen other movies like this and you're like, oh yeah, that feels like the natural progression of this story.
Yeah.
Which is fine as well because it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. But yet again, what do we expect from a Tron movie, right? If you're going in expecting some banging tunes, some great CGI, and some pretty cool action sequences, then you're not going to be disappointed. However, if you are going in expecting your mind to be blown like it was with Ex Machina or Her, then this is not that movie.
Yeah, this isn't a story movie.
This is theme park ride movie. I will say I had a good time when I was watching it because it was pure escapism, but it didn't tickle my brain in the right way.
Even the simplest idea of humanity versus processing power, or being able to access the cloud at any time, or even concerns of security, or, nothing. None of those even low-hanging fruit in terms of tech and humanity issues were anywhere near touched.
They weren't having any of the big conversations.
Or even acknowledging that the big conversations exist, I think is kind of what I'm most disappointed about.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
And you know what else? Soundtrack's banging.
Soundtrack's great.
Yeah, in that sense, I would still want to watch this again on the big screen just to experience that music. In an IMAX hall with IMAX speakers, you could feel it in your bones.
IMAX is worth it, yeah.
Tron Ares opens in Malaysian cinemas tomorrow. That's Thursday, October 9th. Check it out. Check it out on IMAX. Let me tell you, the sound alone is worth it. Let us know what you think once you've seen the movie. You know how to reach out. We're on Instagram on GogglerMY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.